ladies and gentlemen. Hope you've all enjoyed your lunch. I think we might make a start now. So, welcome to this session on the VET Capability Framework. My name is Rosalie Flynn and I'm from Precision Consultancy, and this is my colleague over here, Mitch Cleary, also from Precision. And today we're going to walk you through this framework and give you some ideas for the way that you can use it. I absolutely love talking about this framework, and the reason I love talking about it is because it doesn't have any of the rules that we're used to with qualifications and competencies. It's not about compliance. It's actually a very practical tool that RTOs can take and change it to suit their needs. So we are quite a large group, but I do want this to be an interactive session, and I'm happy if anybody just raises a hand at any point with a question or a comment. I'd like to think that you will leave here feeling fairly confident about with your understanding of the framework and how you can use it. So maybe if I just ask first of all for a show of hands, who is currently using a capability framework of some kind? Couple of people. And which frameworks would they be? Public service frameworks? No? And you've already adapted the IBSA one. Okay, so some of you are fairly familiar with capability frameworks. So for those of you who are not, I always say that a capability framework is not rocket science. There's nothing particularly amazing about them. What they are is basically a description of the sorts of skills and behaviours you would expect to see if someone is doing a good job in their respective organisation. Now, I've said they're high quality work. I guess what we're not talking about is best practice, but what we're talking about is really good, competent practice. So, capability frameworks, we're seeing them more and more in large public organisations. So most of the state governments have got their own frameworks. And if you look at really large national organisations or even multinational organisations, you'll usually find that they've got some kind of a capability framework, which is a way of trying to say to people working across that organisation in different sites and different locations, if you're in this job role, these are our expectations of you. So that's an employer-driven capability framework. But the other kind of capability framework that we're seeing increasingly are frameworks that are specific to a particular profession or discipline. And some of you may have looked at things like Engineers Australia, what they might call a competency framework, or different disciplines. And this is a way of saying to people, if you hire an architect or an engineer, these are the kinds of skills that you can expect that these people will hold. So I guess our framework is more like that. It's specific to our profession. Now, by definition, capability frameworks are usually quite generic. You can imagine that they have to deal with a whole range of work contexts and work roles. So they have to be fairly generic, and people use them for a whole range of, I suppose, human resource management related functions. So for job design, for thinking about things like Okay, so we've got this money, maybe rather than simply reproducing that position description we had before Freddie left, let's really rethink this job. Let's really think about the kind of skills and behaviours that we want from this person. So packaging the job and thinking about what would really best suit. That can be used for recruitment and selection, for framing up selection questions. They also can be used by individuals to do a self-assessment, so people who might be thinking about career progression and the next step, to get them thinking about what are the capabilities that I need if I'm going to jump up that next level. Managers use them for performance appraisal, for giving feedback, for designing learning and development programs and other HR functions like coaching and mentoring and things like that. So the framework itself is really just a platform, and then people just kind of take it in all sorts of different directions, and that's what we want you to do with this framework. So a little bit of background about how we came to develop the framework. Some of you perhaps are familiar with the Productivity Commission's report into this workforce, and it made a number of recommendations, but one of the things that report pointed out was that this sector is changing a lot. The learners are changing a lot, and increasingly our professionals are required to do more complex and different kinds of roles. So although we've got TAE and we have a very well established qualification for people working in the sector, I guess it's fair to say that even though people have got the same qualification, they don't necessarily perform the same way in their respective jobs. And I guess all of us who are in this industry know that we might have a range of learners, and yes, they might all be assessed as competent, but they're going to take up that role in really different ways. So the Productivity Commission report recommended to IBSA that there be some kind of a framework for ongoing professional development and to support the sector to continue to grow its learning. Now, the other thing we know about this sector is that it is really, really diverse, and we had that presentation this morning by the CEO from ACPET. So what we're seeing is this real shift around public and private, but we've got very small niche type RTOs. We've got really large public organisations. We've got RTOs that might just deliver a particular qualification, but they do it nationally. There's a lot of diversity in the sector. And so I guess with all that difference across the country, this capability framework is a way of bringing it back to trying to hammer down some of the fundamentals about what it really is to be a trainer and assessor. So IBSA developed a project reference group, and Mitch and I worked pretty wildly, I'd have to say, for a couple of years, because you can imagine that with a project like this, there was a lot of ideas about what should be in and what shouldn't be in. So it did take quite a while to get there. And I'm really pleased that IBSA, instead of just developing the framework and saying here it is, they've actually gone the next step and developed a suite of tools and resources to assist RTOs to actually work with it and implement it. So I put this little quote up here because I guess you can imagine if you were like Mitch and me and you got the job, and the job was to basically come up with a nice succinct list of skills and behaviours that trainers and assessors need. you get bombarded with a whole lot of ideas, and it's really easy to come up with something that's very complex and messy and has everything included. But in fact, you know, the beauty of these kinds of things, if you can drill down into what it is that's really critical and important. And I thought this quote from Richard Branson was quite pertinent. It's about, as he says, any fool can make something complicated. So we wanted to make something that was really accessible and easy to use and pithy. So that said, we came up with some basic organising principles, and I'm going to walk you through these now. So this framework has got 3 levels. It has got 4 domains and 6 skill areas. And I've set down the bottom there that you've got the option to provide further detail and change the wording to suit the needs of the RTO. So I really do want to reinforce that IBSA is very happy for you to take this and add in extra capabilities, or to put your own values, your organisational values, to adapt it to suit your needs. So thinking about levels, and I guess we're used to thinking about levels in terms of qualifications, but our level 1 person is likely to have a certificate 4, or should have a certificate 4. So they are a good, competent practitioner. So if we think of this person as a trainer and assessor, they should be able to hold a class, they should be able to manage that class, they should be able to conduct assessment, and to operate independently. So this isn't a pre-employment level, this is our good, competent practitioner. And then we put in another level, which was a second level person. So this is a person who is, I guess, whereas our first level person might have another job. You know, maybe it's a hairdresser who comes in and teaches colouring or something like that. Our second level practitioner is more likely to be a dedicated trainer and assessor. So they have, if you like, a bigger kit bag of tools and techniques for training and assessment, and they might provide some sort of guidance or mentoring for our level 1 people. And our third level practitioner is, if you like, might be a lead teacher or something like that. Now, what we know is that, you know, remember I talked before about the diversity in the sector. We know that there are some organisations that really only have 1 level, and there are some that might have multiple levels and steps and stages. But usually when we talk to people, we find that they can slot their people into this framework of 3 levels. Now, if you want to go ahead and build another level, you could, for your own purposes, but this framework presents those 3 levels. And all of the capabilities are shown for 3 levels. So it's a hierarchy of skills, if you like. So we've got 3 levels, and there are some cards that are on the table, and I'll talk more about them later, but there are some cards there that show those skills at different levels. Now, I wanted to say something else about levels. And the first point I make is that experience does not necessarily equate with capability. Now, it's reasonable to think that the more someone does something, the better they get at it. But as some people have said, it's also possible to do something really badly for a year and then just keep on repeating that year over and over and over again. So we don't presume that because someone has been training and assessing for a really long time, they're a level 3 and someone who is new is a level 1. Because we can have some people who are new to the sector and are just fantastic in their roles. So we say that experience doesn't equate with capability. Some job roles are a mix of levels, or if you like, some people are a mix of levels. There are some people who might be brilliant up the front of the room, but maybe not so good on learning theory or learning design, or maybe they don't know as much as they could about systems and compliance. So most of us, if you like, are a mixture in some sense. And if you want to, you can take this framework and you can line the levels up with qualifications and salaries, and there is a copy of a report called, I think it's called TAE Pathways, that does talk about the alignment between the framework and the qualifications. But you don't have to do that. And when we were building this framework, we didn't start from TAE. We actually did it the other way round. And there were some people that said to us, why don't you just take the qualifications and the competencies from the qualifications and build it that way? But we thought it was really, really important to go out to the field and to talk to people. What does a good trainer and assessor look like in your organisation? And so, if you like, we went back and did something more like a functional analysis, built the framework and then mapped the framework to the qualifications. So we did it that way. Has anyone got any questions about levels or comments? Nope. Okay, so we came up with our idea for levels. We agreed that, and then we populated with a whole lot of capabilities or skills, and then we needed some basic organising principles. And we came up with 4 what we call domains. And I think you've all got a copy of a wall chart on your table, and you'll see that there is a circle in the middle that uses colour coding to show that there is a domain for teaching and another one for assessment, another one for industry and community collaboration, and another one for systems and compliance. And that colour coding flows right throughout all of the resources. And I don't know whether it was an accident that systems and compliance is red, but anyway, there it is. So looking at that wall chart, you'll see that each one of those domains has got 4 capabilities. So the green one, which is the teaching domain, has got capabilities around learning theory. What's the theory that people need to underpin their practice at the different levels? There's a capability for design, learning design, another one for facilitation, and another one for evaluation. So we've got 4 nice neat capabilities there under teaching. We've also got 4 under assessment. And again, we've got theory, and then we've got products, something that's about the tools that people need. And then we've got one for assessment processes and another one for validation. And interestingly, I think when we were doing the consultation and validation for this framework, I think most people from most RTOs were pretty confident that their people they were confident of the capabilities of their trainers and assessors in those 2 domains or quadrants. They're probably less confident on the whole about the next quadrant, which is the one about industry and community collaboration. And that's a really deliberate thing in this framework, to put it in as having, if you like, equal weight and value to training and assessment. So it's a way of saying keeping up your vocational competence and your industry currency, that is just as important as your training and assessment practice. And I think, we've been running these workshops about the framework, and it seems to me that for a lot of RTOs it's almost like a seesaw, trying to get that balance right between people who've got good current practice and people who are really good on the training and assessment, and it's the thing of reminding our people all the time that they need to have both of those things. And then the next domain is systems and compliance, and so that's knowing about who the stakeholders are, what the policies and procedures are, knowing what a unit of competence and a training package is, and all of that. So they're our basic capabilities. So you've got 16 capabilities grouped together under 4 domains. Skip over that one. Now also, if you look at that wall chart, you'll see that there is some orange arrows moving in a circle around the quadrants, and those are our skill areas. And this was a bit of a challenge for our graphic designers, because these are things that we say are really, really important to working in this sector, but that don't actually belong in any domain. In fact, they belong in all of the domains. So our skill areas, and again they're shown in 3 levels, our skill areas are leadership, and we're saying leadership is really important for trainers and assessors working at all levels. They need to be able to be self-authorising, that's a bit of a challenge, self-authorising. They need to show leadership, model leadership for their students. Ethics, and I guess ethics is one of those things we don't tend to think about very much until there's a problem, but I guess if you're a manager and you've had a trainer or assessor who's crossed a boundary somehow with a student or has breached confidentiality, ethics becomes really important, and certainly it's important for all roles. Cultural competence, and in that I guess we're talking about diversity in all of its forms, and this links back to the Productivity Commission report, which is saying that I think that report was really saying that particularly for people working in vocational education and training, you have got people with all sorts of complex learning needs, and cultural competence is really important. Innovation is there because I guess we don't want people just to be doing same old, same old. It's the capacity to think out of the box to inspire students that's important. And teamwork and collaboration. And I think particularly if you've got a lot of part-timers or sessional or casual staff coming in to run things, often it's a bit of a challenge to get them thinking of themselves as part of a teaching team, but that's there because we know that managers say this is really, really important, that trainers and assessors understand that they're part of an organisation and part of a teaching team. And research and evidence-based practice. So they're our 6 skill areas, and I don't know that skill areas is the right name for it, but we really struggled with coming up with a name for it. But that can be seen as something that circles around all of our capabilities and all of our domains, or if you like, it could almost be a foundation stone. So that's them. And there's our diagram there. I'm going to skip over that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the resources to support implementation, and we've put copies or examples on the tables of them now. I'm hoping that people will not take them away because we need them for other workshops, so please don't do that. But if you want to get some copies after this, you can hot foot around to IBSA's stall, and I know Louise has got copies of some things so you can get them there. But you can also order them from IBSA, and they're just doing it on a cost recovery basis, so they're not very expensive. You can place orders for the resources, or the other thing is they're all available on IBSA's website to download free. So everything's there on the website, everything's available for you to take, and it's available in Word and PDF, so you can get these and change it, put it into Word, do whatever you like with it. Although it was quite funny, there was I had a number of people who came to the workshop and they'd printed out all of the cards and cut them up and laminated them and everything, and then they saw the cards and said, why did I waste my time? Why didn't I just order a set? But just talking a little bit about the resources, the wall chart, we did that thinking that it would be a really good vehicle for, or good thing to put up in a staff room or to have at a staff meeting to get the discussion going about the team and its capabilities, or just to remind people of these things. So I think the good thing about the wall chart is it's good for the sort of public discussion to get trainers and assessors thinking about themselves and their professional development, if you want to put that up somewhere. And the cards. Now, I keep hearing of new and different ways that people are using the cards. Cards are really good if you've got people who are a bit more tactile, I guess, or like to do, they're a bit more kinesthetic. But they're really, really useful if you've got a team meeting and you want people to get thinking about the capabilities. You can move them around, prioritise them, have a discussion, lay them out. And people tend to use the cards a lot as well for job design. You know, rather than writing a position description 5 times and crossing things out about what's most important and what's least important or whatever, the cards are quite handy in terms of prioritising skills for different jobs. And the other way that I've seen the cards used really effectively is in selection processes. So, for example, if you are interviewing people, you might give them, say there's 6 cards from the different skill areas. While they're sitting there waiting to be interviewed, you can say, have a bit of a think about this job and which one you think is most important and why. Or pick the skill that you think you can demonstrate best and explain it. That kind of thing. And I don't know why. I guess giving the person something that's actually tangible to look at and to think about, you often get some very interesting insights into how the trainer and assessor thinks and understands their job. Now, the other thing that's there, and I think this is probably, well, they're all useful, but this is extremely useful, is that thing there that's called the implementation guide. And it's like a toolkit, and it's got different sections in it. There's a section written for managers with ideas about how they can use the framework. There's a section for trainers and assessors, how they can use it for self-assessment, things like that. So the very first section is kind of what I'm walking you through today, which is a sort of overview or introduction to the framework. But section 2, I think people are particularly interested in how you use it for performance appraisal or performance feedback or performance review, whatever you want to call it. And I guess what I know is that for most managers of trainers and assessors, this is the best part of the job, because it gives you a chance to say to your people who are doing a really great job, let's sit down, let's look at it. But it's also one of the most difficult things if you've got some people who are perhaps not performing in the way that you would want them to. So the capabilities themselves, I think, are very, very useful if you do have to have the difficult conversation with someone about how they need to improve their performance or how they need to really lift their game. And I guess the reason I say that is because it's very easy for those sorts of conversations to degenerate into something that's very personal or, emotional. I think having something that is, you can say, here's a sort of a national, this is a national thing that's about our profession and how professionals in this sector are supposed to conduct themselves. So it often diffuses some of the emotion from the process. But anyway, so in the toolkit, you'll find an example of a fairly standard way to do that, which is you set out the capabilities with the form, and the trainer or assessor rates themselves, and then the manager rates them, and then you have some comments and discussions. And if you like that model, by all means take it and use it and copy the headings and use the tools as you like, or you can adapt it or incorporate the capabilities into your own way of doing performance appraisal. But, if we were a smaller group, I'd probably get you to give me a show of hands about how good you think your performance appraisal systems are, but I know that a lot of people really struggle with that. Now, some people like those written right comments, but I know that for most people it's a real trial because it takes a lot of time to sit down and write it all out, and it's often fairly tedious, I will say that. But I'm going to show you a slightly different approach to performance appraisal. And if you go to IBS's website, you'll find that there's also an Excel spreadsheet that looks something like this. And this gives you the option to do a 360 performance appraisal. So if you want to get feedback from a colleague, or even you could change it to students if you wanted. But the Excel spreadsheet doesn't take a qualitative approach, it uses a quantitative approach, and what I really like about it is it's really, really quick. So just running you through it now, you'll see here, so up here you'll see that we've got the third level practitioner, and there is a different sheet for each level. And then you've got a scale here that uses a 1 to 5 rating scale, which is about the frequency with which the person demonstrates the capability. So I do this always, or I never do this. And then we've got all of our capabilities listed there. Teaching, assessment, industry and community collaboration, systems and compliance. And we've got a box, this is where the staff member rates themselves, 1 to 5. So I'm actually just going to put some things in here to show you how it works. Then we've got how do you rate your peer? And let's just say the manager's pretty happy and gives this person a 4 for everything. So what you can see there is you've got an average for how that trainer or assessor has rated themselves for their teaching, and how their peers rated them, and how their manager has. And over here you've got an average of it all put together. So it doesn't take people very long to complete this. I would say compared with most other performance appraisal systems, it's very, very quick. And as a manager, I think the real beauty of this is in having that quantitative data, you can do things like compare different teaching teams, or you can look across the organisation and say, overall, we're looking really good in this area, but we need to boost our performance in this. So I've found a lot of people, when I've talked to them, have really liked this approach. And just, I guess, one of the things I'd say about using this, the word of caution I'd use in relation to any kind of performance appraisal tool, is the tool's only the starting point for the really important part of the process, which is the conversation. You know, really what good performance review is about is feedback, and it's the dialogue and where you go from here. But this is what you can use to get the discussion started. So I'll just jump out of that now. So you've got the Excel spreadsheet, the cards, the wall chart, the booklet, really nice suite of things, and they're all up there on IPSA's website. Lots of discussion around the room. So have I got any questions or comments? Okay, so you'll be using it as a way of talking to your trainers and assessors as part of your professional development to say, here's something we really need to reflect on as a sort of jumping off point for discussion. Yeah, and look, I'm here to tell you that's not just your organisation, that's right across the country. I think I'd be hearing that, and I know one bloke from a very large TAFE institute in New South Wales, he actually he sent the capabilities out in a Survey Monkey tool to his people who were scattered all over the countryside to get them to, he called it a training needs analysis, but to get them to basically rank themselves, and then that gave him the data and evidence he needed to go back to them and say, we have seriously got to do something about our sort of industry currency and vocational competence. And you know, it was like the proof he could take back to his own teaching team to get them a bit more motivated. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? You love it. Oh, that's so nice to hear. It's good. Look, it's. I think it's very practical. I think it's particularly helpful for people from really small RTOs, because often small RTOs don't have the time. They're too busy dealing with the business of training and assessment to be looking at how they upskill their staff, and so you can basically take it, adapt it and use it to suit your needs, and that's what we hope you will do. Skip over that. So here's some other ideas. As I said, if you look at that implementation guide, you'll see a whole suite of ideas and some tools and case studies, but the capabilities lend themselves pretty well to being put into SurveyMonkey. So I showed you an Excel spreadsheet, but you can use it in SurveyMonkey, and again that dumps it down into an Excel spreadsheet, and often it's quite good to have a bit of quantitative data. Using the cards as a selection aid, structuring coaching and mentoring sessions, you know, sometimes, yep.
Are you saying you have a SurveyMonkey survey?
No, I don't. I'm saying that you could take the capabilities though and cut and paste them into, cut and paste them into SurveyMonkey. And SurveyMonkey works really well if you've got people scattered over wide geographic kind of areas. So the capabilities can be used to structure coaching and mentoring sessions. And I think often with capabilities there's a lot of focus on individuals and whether this person does or doesn't have every capability. But really when we think about it as managers, we don't need every person to have everything. What we need to know is that across the organisation or across the team we've got the combination that we need. And so thinking about your RTO and where it's going and what it's doing, what its priorities are, can help to prioritise capabilities and therefore to prioritise professional development. Capabilities are really good for team reviews and staff meetings, and I had a little discussion with that table over there before about how handy it is when you have to have that difficult discussion to go back to something that's regarded as a national industry benchmark and writing position descriptions. And here's another idea. Someone I know who is delivering TAE, and my guess is there are quite a few of you around the room who are doing that. You can take the framework and get your students to go off and observe trainers and assessors and think about it. So in TAE terms, it's useful. Now I do want to finish off, or I'm almost finished. I want to talk about this thing here called Vet Practitioner Capabilities. So there's a QR code you can come up and scan later if you want, but just jump onto the web here. So if you go to IBSA's Vet Communities page, and I don't know if any of you do that, probably a lot of you are members of LinkedIn and things like that, but what we've done is we've actually set up communities, online communities of practice for each of the 4 domains. So there's a community of practice around teaching, another one around assessment, one around industry and community collaboration, and another one around systems and compliance. So if we just go up here to communities, we go into all communities and we'll see a list of them come up. So you'll see some things here like TAE and the Screen and Media Training Package, various sort of discussions, the Leadership and Management Project Review. But if we go into here, into say, here's the teaching domain. You've got a little bit of a description, and then you've got various discussions going on. Now, the discussions are quite interesting. You know, what's the story on learning style? Here's a discussion about diploma and higher qualifications, challenges for teaching. But I particularly like this little area here called the library. Of course, it's going to be really slow for me today, isn't it? And if you go into the library, you'll find that IBSA and various people have put things on, or if you've got something that you think is really good and you want to share, you can. So here, for example, we've got a report on learning styles, but here's a really good online library of free LLN, training and professional development. You find links to some really fantastic resources. So I'd really strongly encourage you to join those vet communities. And one of the things I really like about it, compared with some of the other online communities that I'm a member of in LinkedIn and things, is this is moderated. And so it doesn't have that free-for-all kind of discussion. If people kind of get off topic or go wayward, there's a moderator who'll bring it back. So I'm just about out of time now. In fact, I am out of time now. So I just wanted to say to you that you can contact Robert Bluer, but I would really strongly encourage you to jump on the IBSA website, download the resources, or pay the very modest fee and get those suite of resources and use them. So thank you everybody, and best of luck.